Welcome, everyone. We're just letting people come in and get settled, but you could introduce yourself in the chat, your name or where you're from, your organization. We have about 160 folks registered, so we're excited to see people from all over the country.
It is now on the hour. Folks, you can continue introducing yourselves through the chat. Just as a reminder, you will have to select everyone as opposed to just the hosts and panelists so that everyone can see you. But we'll go ahead and get started. Is that okay, Kathy?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Thanks, everyone. Just noting the housekeeping items, we do have the Q&A box turned on so you can ask questions. It's probably going to be too many people for us to see the raised hands. We do plan on recording the webinar and we'll share the slides and a follow-up email along with resources. And for closed captioning, you can click the 3 dots at the bottom of your screen if that is helpful to you. You want to move forward? So to introduce myself, my name is Kathy Pettit. I'm a senior fellow with the Urban Institute and co-direct NNIP, the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership. Erin Korlikowski and I are co-moderating today and are very excited to welcome all of you. NNIP's values include that making progress on the outcomes we care about in our communities requires collaboration. So having the NNIP and United Way networks connect more consistently has long been an ambition of mine. So this is really exciting to see this come to fruition and to see so many people from all over the country, different kinds of United Ways, different kinds of NNIP groups. So for our agenda today, Erin and I will do some quick overview slides before turning it over to the Atlanta and San Antonio teams. We will have a panel for most of the time, but have reserved some time at the end for Q&A. Not nearly enough, but again, we intend for this session really to be the start of a deeper relationship. So please include your questions, and if there's follow-up needed with not enough Q&A time, we can do that. Next slide. Lizzie Farr, my colleague here, and I work at the Urban Institute, and which is a nonprofit research organization in Washington, D.C., which coordinates NNIP. And I have been, some folks are saying that the chat and Q&A are disabled, so I will we'll work on that on the side. That's here. So back to Urban, that we have researchers that focus on housing, well-being, labor and education, health, and a lot more. And so I encourage you to check us out at urban.org. Urban Institute is the home and helps to coordinate NNIP. Next slide. So my colleague Leah Hendy and I co-direct the network, which is about 30 years old. We turn 30 next week, and it focuses on helping local places use data to benefit their neighborhoods. We have network partners in 31 places that do the on-the-ground work of helping people get access to data and the help they need it. They are really trusted organizations with deep local knowledge, and I'm very excited you'll get to meet the partners from Atlanta and San Antonio today. And then collectively, we engage changemakers like your networks to share insights on data in policy and practice, building a culture of data use, and on principles for using data to advance equity. To share a little bit of our worldview before we deep dive into the two places, we really believe that data can be transformational, and we aspire to having people in all places being able to access and use data to understand and improve places where they live. And for us, the community is the right unit of analysis. So that means we need good data capacity in government, academia, nonprofits, funders, and everyday people. And of course, this includes access to data, just the raw data and the help in using it that NNIP partners and I know some United Ways provide for their grantees, but it also requires about a dozen skills and practices. We'll send a handout with the details. The first two will be more familiar to you, both individual skill training, organizational, thinking about the culture of data in your organization. And the third one is new to most people, thinking about collective capacities. This is less often talked about. It's learning communities like the two of ours here, resource investment in people and infrastructure across a place, collective planning and data sharing. So I think you'll see some of those themes come out in our panel today. And now I'll turn it over to Erin, and I can try to troubleshoot the Q&A questions.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. And thanks for sharing that overview of NNIP, the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership. We have some of that summary information on the left side of the slide, but I really think you were spot on there with the combination of what it takes to build community data capacity, from open access to data, training, dedicated technical assistance, and the importance of having ad hoc help available to build that collective capacity. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Aaron Krolikowski, and I serve as the Vice President for Research and Data Insights at United Way Worldwide. And I'd like to start off by saying hello to all the United Ways and NNIP partners on the call today, and a huge thank you to the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership and our friends at the Urban Institute for getting us all together for this conversation. As we know, many United Ways are already leaders, and you'll hear from some of them today, but they're already leaders in the support and development of community data capacity, working directly or indirectly with NNIP partners. And still other United Ways, many United Ways of all sizes, are regularly called on to share information on community conditions, whether or not they're actually ready to do so. And we want to help advance that. So there are also a lot of natural points of collaboration between NNIP and United Way that have made these long-standing partnerships so successful. For United Ways and NNIP partners on the call, the simple Venn diagram that you see in front of you highlights our mutual focus on thriving communities. And to support thriving communities in the 21st century, we need community data and the means for communities to understand it, and mechanisms for collaboration on responses and solutions. United Ways raise funds for community programs and services, which means that those of us on the call who are affiliated with United Way, we know how limited public and philanthropic resources actually can be. And using community data effectively can help to drive collaboration and can help to break down those really big challenges into hyperlocal opportunities for both change and improvement. Let's go to the next slide. So the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership was founded in 1996, and it started building a network of organizations working on the use of neighborhood level data and community-led improvement. Now, to start something in '96 means that there already needed to be partnerships going on, and there definitely were ongoing collaborations between university and community data partners and United Way's focused on similar questions. And it didn't take long, thinking back to the '90s, for partnerships like the one that we have at the top of the slide here, the one between the Polis Center and the United Way in Indianapolis. It didn't take long for them to join the NNIP network. And their early projects, like the Savvy Community Assessment Tool, which you can still look up and learn more about, those early projects contributed to United Way of Central Indiana's leadership on a variety of projects and set the stage for many of their current day initiatives, including the Community Engagement Data Initiative, or SEDI for short. In other cases, like in San Antonio, United Ways were early incubators of the community data organizations that have grown into NNIP partners. And in other spots, like Houston, United Way is not a direct NNIP partner, but collaborates very closely with their local NNIP partner. And United Way of Greater Houston has a program called the Coffee and Quality Case Study Program, which is helping nonprofit partners in their community navigate an increasingly complex world of data. And even more, we know that there are countless examples of NNIP partners and United Ways using data from 211 to understand hyperlocal community needs in near real time. And the COVID-19 pandemic has great examples of how communities used that local data to respond to ongoing community challenges. And current and ongoing responses to disasters and emergencies continue to highlight and underscore the importance of this hyperlocal information, this neighborhood level information in supporting our communities. Now, we're only able to highlight a few examples of these collaborations here today, but we know that there are many more examples of collaboration between United Ways and NNIP partners where there's direct collaboration and also where there's just a lot of support and engagement that have taken place through the years. And so I don't know if Kathy's had the opportunity to, or if we've been able to fix the chat function, but if it is fixed, please feel free to use the chat to share any other examples that you're aware of NNIP partners and United Ways collaborating with neighborhood level, hyperlocal data, community data capacity building. We'll take a look at them and share some highlights at the end of our conversation today, if we're able to go through those. Let's take a look at the next slide. So before we jump into the conversation with San Antonio and Atlanta, the reason you're all here today, we wanted to share a few low-cost, no-cost strategies that your United Way or NNIP partners could use to get started on your own community data journey. Smaller team strategies that you see listed here are things that teams with 1 or 2 people could potentially take on. Maybe it's hosting a small meeting or convening partners around coffee, or even getting on the agenda at a public meeting to share information on the community. These are all things that any United Way leader can do and United Ways of all sizes can engage in. Now, there's also bigger team strategies listed here, and there's some overlap, of course, but bigger team strategies usually require an extra teammate or 2, and some of those really specialized skill sets that you'll hear more about today, but also in the follow-up from today's conversation. Bigger teams also have the opportunity to go more in depth or host larger meetings or events when it comes to some of these strategies. But keep in mind that getting started with community data really does not have to mean getting started by staring at a spreadsheet all day. You might have the biggest impact just by getting people together to build a better understanding of a community condition and getting everybody on the same page about what you can all do about it together. And so I'll just say thank you again to everybody who's with us today. I'm excited to hear from our next set of speakers, whose work I can say inspired me as a younger United Way professional when I was just getting my start with United Ways in Buffalo, New York and Las Vegas, Nevada. And so with that, I'd like to hand things back to Kathy, who will introduce our friends from San Antonio and Atlanta.
Fantastic, thank you. I think both Aaron and I could talk for the whole hour, but we wanted to leave most of the time for the local stories. Our first pair of panelists is from Atlanta. Tommy Pierce, who's the Executive Director of Neighborhood Nexus, the NNIP partner, and Alvin Glimpf, the Chief Community Impact Officer for the United Way of Greater Atlanta. And they'll be talking about their child well-being index and really how it has demonstrated how data can both guide investments and help different stakeholders find alignment over time. For both of these examples, they're really long-standing relationships, 10 years or more beyond that, and they'll talk to you about how those have evolved over time. But we're excited to also have them help you think about how to get started. And then our second pair is from San Antonio, Laura McKernan, who's the Executive Director at CI Now, and Sebastian Schreiner, who's the Impact Data Officer at the United Way of San Antonio and Bexar County, which they have taught me how to say Bexar County correctly, I believe, after all of these years. So what we'll be doing is just to have a few minutes from each of them to talk about sort of the basics, the description of what their work together has been like, because we know that you're interested in the content. We will provide more stories about and written narrative and links afterwards, and then move into a panel conversation. Erin and I will ask the panelists questions. And I believe that the Q&A has been prepared at least. We'll work on the chat next, but we will turn it over to Atlanta.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. And first, let me just say good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to be part of this conversation here with Tommy. You know, as I was reflecting on my remarks today, I really would just share that I am extremely proud and grateful of our collaborative effort. Without a doubt, Neighborhood Nexus, from my vantage point, is my most significant and impactful partner that I do work with. And so that's why I'm proud to talk about this work, but extremely grateful to have the opportunity to do this work with them and the impact that we have. And so just to give a sense of what our work is all about, just to ground you in United Way of Greater Atlanta, our work, our philosophy is based in this idea of child well-being. And so for us, as we have labeled it child well-being, it's really an emphasis bigger than the child, an emphasis of if you want children to thrive, families have to thrive. And for children and families and thrive, the institutions and organizations that are in the lives of those children and families have to be doing well. And so while we call it child well-being, it's really a comprehensive approach, holistic approach to improving our region. And the region that we serve, 13 counties, extremely diverse, large geographic space, requires that you have a way to get down to the neighborhood level because of the diversity and the vastness of the space that we deal with, right? And so as we are focused on impacting in a space that is literally 80 miles from top to bottom and 60 miles from east to west, you have to be able to drill down to make sure that we're getting the interventions, the partnerships where the families and the resources to the neighborhoods that need the most. And so this tool is a way that we galvanize our community around the essence of child well-being. We started in 2015, 2016, the child well-being movement. We quickly realized that we needed a way to measure how well we as a community are doing to ultimately make sure that we are focusing those resources. And so the index is a single measure. It's a composite of multiple measures that we break up into child measures, family measures, and community measures. And it is through the partnership of Neighborhood Nexus that really allows us to not only access the data, but analyze the data. And I am grateful for this partnership. And as I reflected on it, I don't think I've done presentations. I think Tommy is the most popular partner of mine as I've gone around the region. Oh man, we're probably up to about 10 presentations we've done together. And so the idea of Alvin and Tommy coming around the region talking about data is something that our region really relies on. But it's more than the presentations that I talk about when I think about this amazing partnership. It is really the thoughtfulness in terms of their expertise in data and the pros and cons, allowing us to make some of the best decisions that have really played out to be our benefit. One of the things that we are proud of is that our index is informed by our community. It's not just Alvin and Tommy sitting up in a room coming up with the best measures. We really rely on the feedback that we get from our community to inform the decisions of what colors, what measures, how do we report that data. And as we get the feedback from our community and then try to synthesize it into what is the best decision to make, it has been Neighborhood Nexus, that team that really has walked us through the best decisions to get to a place where we are proud to land on the decisions that we get to and have got the best feedback from our community. So I'm excited to continue this partnership. We have released, we're up to our third index release. We released it in 2017, another one in 2019, and then the last was 2023. We're in the process of releasing our next one in 2026, where we will um, take our insights around the community and continue to do deep dives of engagements to make sure that we have taken those insights from boardrooms to barbershops so that we can democratize this data so that ultimately all of our region has the information that they need to get the resources to the children and the communities that need them most. So thank you for this time, Kathy. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of set the stage and looking forward to digging in deeper in terms of some of the benefits and what has really why we are doing some really good things down here in Atlanta with this child well-being index.
Great. I think, and perfectly on time, everyone is. I'll pass it over to Sebastian.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, my name is Sebastian Schreiner, as was mentioned, Impact Data Officer at United Way of San Antonio. Just for a little bit of context, we're a fairly well-resourced United Way when it comes to a data team on our end, which actually really helps the partnership, which you'll hear about throughout this. And I want to add a little bit of history as to, it was alluded to early on about we were part of the genesis of who is now CI Now. And United Ways have always been, like our United Way has always been a very data hungry organization. We deal with big picture issues, we deal with community needs, and we need a big picture view of the community to be able to do that. So starting in the late 90s, really, this began with where can we get at data that's living outside of academic settings just? Because really looking at community use, community availability, community capacity on community data, and that's a dialogue that eventually resulted in, initially it was called ACIS, the Alamo Area Community Information System in the early 2000s, being founded, but still housed with United Way still serving as a fiscal agent and partnering with UT Health eventually, the School of Public Health, to house an emerging organization that would ultimately end up becoming CI Now. And helping spin that off in the late 2000s, and ultimately becoming a 501c3 independently, but retaining that partnership, that ongoing interaction between United Way and who eventually became CI Now as an organization. And that ratcheted up another level, and I'll go over that as I'll outline in what is our current relationship, what kind of dimension does that relationship currently entail, is we deepened the partnership as part of our pivot towards using results-based accountability model more heavily for data-informed investment and continuous improvement work in our community, which those of you who are familiar with it, the results-based accountability model has community indicators as an integral portion of its approach, and I'll go into that in a little bit. So what does the relationship look like today? The investment process, it was mentioned, Alvin mentioned earlier that there is a integral component to making sure that what data we use and how we look at community from an indicator perspective is informed by community. And that is how we adjusted our investment model. Our 5-year investment cycles start with a process of what do we want to see in the community? How do we want community to change? Where are we seeing challenges in community? And that starts with a very broad process of statements that are, we want children to be happy. But eventually you get to the point of, well, how do you know that children are happy? How do you know that children are not happy? How do you measure that? And that's where See Now is really important as a partner in the dialogue of surfacing in conversation with community, what do we want to measure? What are the best candidates that we can actually look at? What can we trend over time? What can we really anchor our work around? And ultimately make investments also towards in terms of if we want to contribute to this particular outcome, can we draw a line between the strategies we invest in and the indicators we'll ultimately end up tracking? And that goes into the second piece. After we make investment, we don't sit on those. We annually go through a lengthy process to refresh those indicators in partnership. We just did this for our FY26 investment cycle that just now started. And keeping the finger on the pulse, making sure that we don't lose track of where community is evolving over time, who are the most affected populations within an indicator, really disaggregating, really geographically digging into smaller geographies, really digging into populations who are most impacted by certain conditions, which also helps inform the investment side up front. We're thought partners for each other on an ongoing basis, coming from slightly different angles. See Now coming at it from as a curator and producer of data, and us as a heavy data user. And really that ongoing dialogue really, I think, helps up the game for both organizations at the end of the day, in terms of making sure that we stay grounded in good data and that See Now stays grounded in good practice. And that really helps both sides. Product as co-design and feedback is an outgrowth of that. So we're often end up being beta testers of things that are in the works and provide feedback in the early stages, which is really helpful for us and for See Now, but also just a fun thing to do in terms of being part of the genesis and not just being presented and here's what it is, and now go and use it, whether or not it's useful and tailored to your needs. And the way we express that partnership up to today is we're a recurring co-investor in See Now's capacity. Like that has never changed even after the spinoff. And we're cheerleaders for each other's work because we have similar philosophies when it comes to big picture community change. And we're very, it effectively helps us to support each other in terms of our mutual capacity and an individual capacity when it comes to data production and data use. We'll see if I stay within the 5.
Yes, definitely. Amazing. Aaron, do you want to kick us off on the panelist questions?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much to Alvin and Tommy, Sebastian and Laura again for being here today and for sharing a little bit about what's going on in San Antonio and Atlanta. Alvin, I want to start with you. You mentioned the importance of your partnership with Neighborhood Nexus, and really at that point, the boundary maybe or the line between access and analysis of the data. It's not enough just to access it. The partnership really helped to advance the analysis. So, well, can you talk a little bit more about that? What were some of the things you've been able to accomplish in Atlanta through this partnership with Neighborhood Nexus, thinking about that challenge that might be in there that other United Ways might face when it comes to analysis?
Yeah, so I guess it is unspoken, but in Greater Atlanta, Neighborhood Nexus is what I refer to as the data beast, the gurus, right? And so for us, we don't have that level of capacity in our organization, just flat out. And so their ability to help us integrate neighborhood level data from various sources. I mean, we have data from the federal government, from our state level. And then taking that data and then allowing us to then map it along with our grantee information and our outcomes, allow us to be very intentional and surgical in terms of how we're investing in our community. And their without a doubt, for us, they're the primary data aggregator and analysis, but they also have helped us in terms of how are we the dashboard building, the making sure our mapping tools, they've come on board to help us with our story mapping so that we can do a better job with our storytelling. And so it's not just the aligning of investments that I mentioned earlier, but it's also being very nuanced in how we tell our story. And for me, that is critical because so much of my role had been going around the region, really talking about the child well-being index literally over 140 times in various circles. And so to be able to be focused on what we're good at in terms of the convening and taking the information and translating into what the community needs to make some informed decisions, and have full confidence that the data technical capacity side is not only being managed, but managed with expertise, is something that allows this partnership to thrive. And so again, I have not only taken him, Tommy, around to conferences, and we've presented, but we've brought him into the board. He has awards now. I've taken him in video form to conference presentations, so when he's not with me, I'm showing a video of Tommy talking. But it's again, very proud and grateful of our collaboration.
Thanks, Alvin. And hopefully, Tommy, you're not traveling in Alvin's pocket to those conferences, but technology does do wonderful things. I just wanted to note, Alvin, you mentioned something, the importance of nuance and how United Way of Greater Atlanta is telling the story of what's going on in the community. And you also mentioned the importance of being able to talk to boardrooms, but also being able to talk to barbershops and everywhere in between. So thanks for those points. Kathy, can I hand things back to you?
Sure. Tommy, I was prepping for this call and was surprised to see the story that the Child Wellbeing Index started in 2016. So you also are coming up to a anniversary. And I know the two organizations have sort of grown together over the last decade. How have you seen things change over time?
Yeah, I mean, it started with the project, the Child Wellbeing Index. Y'all saw that a minute ago when Alvin was first presenting, and that sort of geographic pattern of where the concentration of need is in Atlanta is kind of like, when you have something on your phone or your screen for so long that the icons are burned into it, like that's the map, or the heat map that we want burned into every Atlantan's retina of like, you should be thinking about need in this way. And I think we've been able to accomplish that by working together on this project for so long. But it's really evolved much further than just a project, where this relationship predates both Alvin and I. We think it'll outlast both of us too. Like that is important to how both of our organizations operate. It also means we don't need any like preambles or agendas to have a meeting with each other. We just text. Alvin texted me when I was at the dentist office the other day, and I can tell him my hot takes on the SNAP data from the dentist chair. And I was in his office yesterday pitching him a new idea, and we just have like a back and forth relationship that is very comfortable. They have an evergreen board seat on our advisory board. We have to work closely together, and I think we do it really well.
Fantastic. And I think for either of you, I did want to do the balance between showing sort of rock star decade-long collaborations and being encouraging to folks who are just at the beginning of things. Do one of you have any advice of how to get started for folks who are just meeting each other, or people who are seeking out a data partner?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of mutual value add to from a civic data intermediary. I always think the United Way of, you can donate your money anywhere, but the United Way will help make sure that those dollars are used strategically in your community, right? And having data and data tools and that like understanding of the entire landscape will make that impact greater. And so by helping provide that data and that analysis, we can help leverage people's dollars. And so I think figuring out how to articulate the value for yourself, but also what's in it for your local United Way can kind of open those doors. And I think what I said to Kathy a couple weeks ago, it's like finding the right sort of gateway drug project to work with your local United Way. It doesn't have to be big. It can be a small initiative to demonstrate the impact and then go from there.
Alvin, do you have any advice for you United Way peers on the?
No, the reality is data is essential. And so I would say it doesn't always have to be a huge project to start, but acknowledge that sometimes the capacity isn't in-house, so you have to go outside. There's volunteer opportunities where you can get a data person to sometimes volunteer opportunities. There's universities that are often having students graduate level students who also might be able to share some capacity. But it is just, and even I would also look at sponsors. I've had corporate sponsors who've been willing to lend resources because they value the data needs and understand that United Ways don't necessarily have the capacity. So I would lean in where you have the great relationships, but I would just stay focused on the fact that data is essential, and so you just have to figure it out one way or another. But the resources are out there. You just sometimes have to be very strategic and flexible.
That's a great list of partners to try. I'd also suggest if you have your regional Federal Reserve Community Development Office is also a good resource for folks that work across the whole country. All right, we're switching over to San Antonio for a minute. Aaron, do you want to start?
Definitely, definitely. And thanks, Kathy, Alvin, and Tommy for talking about a little bit more about how United Ways or NNIP partners can get started. I was particularly struck by something Sebastian said in the overview of what's going on in San Antonio. Sebastian, you talked about how the United Way of San Antonio and Bexar County and CNOW are really acting as cheerleaders for each other's work. And there are many roles that United Ways are asked to play for communities. And so I was wondering, in that vein of being cheerleaders for each other's work, how has the partnership with CNOW helped your various roles in community, whether it's talking about community investments, strategic allocations, developing resources, or aligning multiple partners? Where do you see those benefits?
Again, I think context, United Ways are big tent organizations. We're broad by design. We're broad in our nature of, we deal with issues around children, youth, families, adults, safety net. And that broad perspective requires a partner who also can think as broadly when it comes to the data side. So yes, we will dive into specific pieces of information here and there, but at the same time, we need to keep the big picture in mind, and that's one of the main ways CNOW helps us keep that multifaceted understanding of community issues top of mind, and really also knowledge and access to data sources that we do not have or don't even know that they exist in some cases. I'm just like, we are interested in hospital discharge data, for example. We don't have a direct line to that, but it can be really helpful in really helping us lead with data as a convener, really making sure that, and this has really helped over the decades, that we as a United Way become a credible source of community intelligence. And we can't have that if we're acting on our own. We need that in partnership with CNOW. That it really enhances our standing as a United Way, being a trusted partner in addressing community conditions by our community and other players in that community, other stakeholders in that community, having trust that we look at this in a disciplined and well-founded way, really helping with alignment. Community indicators are one way to point people in the same direction. Common language of, we are understanding a challenge around child abuse and neglect, for example. We're understanding it the same way. We're framing it the same way within our organization, but also then eventually with other funders locally. How are we looking at the community condition the same way? And with that, this relationship helps us norm some of that conversation even further. And so, last comment before I hand it off: win-win partnership. Like that's where that's the way we're really looking at this. because see now growing capacity to serve community ultimately serves us and others. And that's been always the nature of the relationship that we've had. It's not just about United Way. We're here in service of community, and we have a big picture view, but we also want that capacity that's being built and that is available to spill beyond the boundaries of United Way and be available that way. So really, and promoting United Way data sets beyond the boundaries of United Way. If we're talking about ALICE data, we're talking about the early development instrument, we're talking about distribution of high quality child development, like some key issues that we care about, where we actually own some data sets. It helps us elevate those beyond just United Way, also into the broader community by working with CNOW to elevate that conversation around that data beyond the boundaries of our organization.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll hand things back to Kathy.
Laura, as you may not remember this, but you have told me one time that collaboration is really hard and that you really need a good reason to do the work that it takes to collaborate with other folks. So that has stayed with me for a long time as I've asked other folks to partner with us. But why do you, what would you say to community data organizations about why, or academic centers, why they should look to partner with the United Way? Where's the motivation?
Yeah, I have a couple of quotes in that bucket that are go-tos. One is, if it's not hard, you're not really doing it right. And another is, collaboration would be a really great thing if it didn't always seem to end up involving other people. Because I'm an inveterate introvert. But yeah, you know, I think all NNIP partners are like CI now, in that we care about growing local data capacity, not growing ourselves, although we can be a vehicle for growing local data capacity, but strengthening the entire data ecosystem, data generators, data users, the people who manage it, the people who control whether it can be generated and used at all. And United Way has been a great collaborator with us on that because it extends our reach so far. As we were preparing for this call, had been thinking about it, and I feel like I've spent a lot of hours in rooms doing what I call just-in-time data training. So explaining to people, while they're looking at data, why do you need to see both the rate and the number? You know, what's the margin of error? Why do we need appropriate denominators? And I think the vast majority of those hours have been in United Way rooms, you know, with their impact councils and issue councils before that, and you know, trainings for nonprofits that we've partnered on over the years. So those are folks that are already together with a common goal or common set of goals in mind, and have data in front of them that they need to use right now. And that's just absolutely the golden moment for us to connect with folks. And they can follow up with us later, you know, and get involved with our user-centered design, or use something that we've already got out there. So
That's great. Yeah, I think one of the pieces that make this partnerships great is they're both sort of embedded long-term organizations. So I'm, like Tommy said, that can really goes beyond, it's both personal and goes beyond the personal.
yeah, and just to add, you know, our relationship goes back to the late 90s, and I was at United Way of America in the late 90s. I don't know where Sebastian was, but in San Antonio too, our relationship goes far beyond temporally the two of us here today.
Switching back to Eris.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Laura. Those were really, really wonderful comments you just made, and hopefully all of our United Way colleagues could hear just how important it is to get people together in person, and the leading role that United Ways play for communities across the country on that front. So thank you for that. Now, As we mentioned, these are really wonderful long-term examples, but they're not the only examples of collaborations that are taking place between NNIP partners and United Ways. And we know we do have some other partners, both formal partnerships and maybe less formal partnerships on the call today. So we were wondering, now that the chat is up and running, if you could share, what's one lesson you've learned about sustaining the relationship and keeping community at the center of your decision making, even when things are uncertain like they may be today? And so please feel free to add some of your thoughts in the chat. I know we've seen some really great additional examples that have been shared by NNIP partners and United Ways in Connecticut, the state of Connecticut, as well as a great little interaction I see there in Pittsburgh between the NNIP partner there and the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania. Wonderful. I don't see much going into the chat, but panelists, any additional thoughts for the group in terms of sustaining relationships, especially during times of uncertainty?
I can jump in on this one. One, institutionalizing the relationships. Don't center them in individuals. They're important, but they will change eventually, sooner or later. And I think one thing that's really helped us always is, and this is partially just baked into each organization's DNA, is the way we look at community. So whenever there is a need to, what is the higher piece that we align around? It's really about, how do we know if community is better off? How can we contribute to communities better off? Who is involved in making that happen? What data is involved in making that happen will change. But the necessity for both of those components and players who are savvy around those components to be in a relationship that is ongoing will not change. And I think every time we run into like something down a rabbit hole with a particular data set, you can always bring it back up to what is our role in community, and recenter around that.
Thanks, Sebastian. Kathy, can I hand things back to you for our final group question?
Sure. And I was going to prioritize Q&A, but I don't think we have questions quite yet. So just if a couple of you want to chime in on what's next, sort of what you're excited about in coming in your city or in your relationship.
Well, I'll definitely chime in. As I mentioned earlier, the 2026 release is happening. And so the idea of continuing to explore insights, continuing to get a sense what has progressed, as we have released it 3 times. When we went from the second release, from the first release to the second release, the score went up. From the second release to the third release, the score went up. So I'm particularly intrigued to see what the score looks like. We never take it for granted that the score will go up. We actually expected it to go down, last time, and it surprised us. And so this being my second iteration of the index, actually being here at United Way, there's a certain experience and excitement about what's to come. And so the sense making part of it is something that I'm really looking forward to actually dig into the data and get not just the input of the data team, but pulling in some of our stakeholders, our marketing team, our development team, our community engagement experts, to really figure out what are the major ahas that we can take to the community, and then to just see how that has its own life. And so I'm looking forward to that.
I'll add one thing to
Sure.
that, which is there's a lot of energy and probably not enough shame in Atlanta that we were recently named the worst in the country for economic mobility by Raj Chetty. And sometimes it takes, the Harvard professor to tell you how bad you're doing, but it has really catalyzed a lot of effort. And so being able to use this next iteration of the Child Wellbeing Index to really frame and tell the story of what that looks like, use it to help explain some of the drivers of economic mobility, and most important to kind of use that narrative to move from the data to action strategically and quickly. So we're really excited about that.
Great. There's a couple of questions. I'll start with the hard one. From a funding perspective, there are generally fewer funds available for data initiatives than there are for, say, feeding hungry people. So how do United Ways here manage to keep data initiatives a priority, even though budget efforts are hard with the competing priorities and real people needs? That's a hard one.
That is a tough one, but I'll jump in first and just say that the cost of doing this work has plummeted over the last 10 to 15 years. And so I can say that organizations like United Way Worldwide, we are actively exploring ways that we can provide nationwide data sets that are hyper-local in their presentation to individual communities and individual organizations. We are actively working on building that infrastructure to support, let's say, our entire network of over 1,100 United Ways around the world, and around 1,000 United Ways in the United States. And so while we always want to, make sure that there are enough resources available, enough resources as possible to feed as many hungry people as we possibly can, we are finding that there are more strategic ways that we can deliver these and help to expand community data capacity now more than ever before. And we are doing everything we can to capitalize and advance on those reduced costs so that local United Ways like yours can continue feeding as many people, supporting as many people, and advancing your community in the ways that your community members want. But we're working hard on it. And Sebastian, Alvin, this is a regular challenge.
In terms of justification, we always frame this around we have limited capacity and limited resources to invest in community, but we also need to know where to place that capacity. And so the need to be well informed on how to invest has not decreased. And then the need for data to be able to make the case to a variety of stakeholders, whether they're local or not local, has only increased over time. So from that perspective, we've not really been in a position where we had to fight for resources around data because it became an integral part of the process of making sure that the investments we do make are done in a way that is heavily data informed and is really justifiable to our community when the questions also inevitably come as like, why are you investing here and not there? Mm-hmm. And having a good way of saying this is why our resources go to the places they currently do. So that's not been as big of an issue for us, or at least not recently.
And the only thing I would add, and because I think both of those points were on point, is that data is the fuel that makes this entire engine run. And so not just guiding our investments, it's also the fuel of storytelling in terms of our marketing. It's also the fuel of our development team as they're making the case to our funders. And so it's not always an easy case. It just depends on your particular environment. But I would definitely lean into advocating from a perspective of none of this work goes without data.
Framing data as a currency itself, I think, is a really helpful view, at least with some stakeholders, when it comes to how it elevates our work as United Ways.
I'll also say from an NNIP's point of view that data is needed, especially in times of scarcity, as you're making really hard decisions between doing one thing or another. But there's a good question from Phyllis Betts, an NNIP alumni in Asheville. To what extent do the local United Ways collaborate with community foundations or other funders?
So
go ahead.
In Atlanta, Neighborhood Nexus was co-founded by the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta and the Atlanta Regional Commission, which is our metro planning organization. about 16 years ago. And then that very quickly expanded into a core partnership model that included United Way and the Metro Chamber. And so, Neighborhood Nexus wouldn't be here without both of those entities. Community Foundation is currently our fiscal agent, so I'm a Community Foundation employee, and so is part of our team. And so I guess in those ways, we are working together through them. And then those big four organizations, I mean, if all four of them weren't committed to economic mobility in Atlanta, then we wouldn't be having the conversations that we're able to have. And so kind of try to provide background support to all of them. But yeah, it's indirect and directly working together in Atlanta.
Sebastian or Laura?
One thing I'm looking forward to right now, I've mentioned earlier about community data being a way also of centering collaboration, interfunder collaboration. And we're in the nascent stages of working with other local entities who are heavily involved in investing in community conditions and getting to a point ideally, and that might express itself eventually on the funding side, we don't know yet, in terms of centering. When we say we talk about community condition X, will we all use the same indicator that's defined the same way? So really centering the conversation around the same indicators with the support of CNOW might eventually translate into us putting that work also on broader feet. But that's a little speculative. It's in nascent stages at this point.
And I guess I'll just quickly add, I want to make sure that folks don't get the idea that NNIP partners are supported by vast amounts of United Way or foundation dollars. And I won't speak to everybody's business model, but like in San Antonio, we range in any given year from 60 to 85% contract funded. And we work with all of our our community foundation, family foundations, in addition to United Way. But most of the work that we do is contracted because they have some kind of data need, and we can generally help with that. So, supporting them in achieving their goals that requires data in some way.
Great. Oh, there's a couple of questions about Urban Institute United Way support and getting connected with data partners. Definitely, we will, as we wrap up the Q&A now, to have Aaron do the final slides. We will be sending a follow-up note with our contact information afterwards, and we'd love to talk to other folks who are interested in this work. And both Aaron and I are thinking about ways to continue the conversation and to continue to share fantastic examples that we have from both sides. Aaron, yeah, do you want to move to the last slides, which I think are part of this?
Absolutely, yes, definitely. And hopefully for both our United Way and NNIP friends on the call, we can answer some of the questions that have been shared in relation to support and next steps. So just want to say many thanks again to all of our speakers, and a big note of gratitude to the Urban Institute and NNIP for today's conversation. Thank you so much for having us and supporting this kind of dialogue. Before we go, we do want to remind you a little bit of some of the different ways United Ways and NNIP partners and similar organizations can work together to use data to advance their community goals. As you heard before, bringing people together in person to review and discuss community data together is one of the most powerful things that you can do. It helps to align and coordinate partners, and really helps you identify which data and information is most important to your local stakeholders so that you can make the case for community change. Another strategy that we want you to keep in mind, in addition to what we've shared earlier, is to learn about and share existing data tools that already have hyperlocal information about your community. All of the web pages on this slide have publicly available information from credible and reliable sources. Thinking about Sebastian's comment earlier, being that credible source of community intelligence, these tools will help you get to that point. Many United Ways are already familiar with some of the data and information on affordability in the United States as it refers to ALICE data. And then many of us, NNIP and United Way alike, are making regular use of 211 data. And we saw some great examples from Connecticut and Pittsburgh in the chat on that. The Urban Institute, I always want to plug these, always is releasing helpful data tools that produce timely insights on things like diaper shortages and SNAP benefits, affordability, economic mobility, and that data is often shared down to the county, zip code, or census tract level. So just please use the chat to continue sharing other sources of local data that your United Way or NNIP partners might recommend to others on the call today. We've got some really, really wonderful examples already in the chat. So let's go to that the last slide that has a little bit more on next steps. So for my United Way colleagues, but also our NNIP partners, start by talking with your team, your volunteers, your grantees, about what data would be most helpful to your collective work. You want to also explore the range of local data options already available to you, including our United Way network intelligence platform called United by Data, which is accessible via United Way online. You also want to reach out to your local or maybe an NNIP partner that's based in your state. You could also reach out to a university extension office, your local town or city community development contact. Kathy mentioned Federal Reserve community development contacts a few moments ago, but there's already a community of people that are working on using community data, and it's always great to connect with them to understand how they're using it and how United Way might be able to support those efforts. We also encourage you to connect with your United Way neighbors to learn more about how they're using community data. And we know that there are probably really great opportunities to collaborate with those neighboring United Ways. Finally, if you do need help, you can always contact our team at United Way Worldwide using email or via the Ask United Way network help desk. So Ask United Way is a great way to get in touch. We are working to deliver that dedicated technical assistance and all of that ad hoc support. So please get in touch with us. And last but not least, you'll receive a thank you and a follow-up that will have links to sign up to our newsletters, both NNIP and United Way. And we do always ask you to follow us on social media as well. So with that, I'll say thanks again and hand things back to Kathy. Any final words?
Oh, just a thank you for everybody taking the time and for our panelists for sharing their stories. I'm excited to hear other examples that you can send along afterwards about how you have partnered or used data internally or improved data capacity. We saw a great example from our Indianapolis partner a couple of days ago. So we're excited to collect these stories please reach out. There's a couple of questions about us providing support and thinking about how partnerships could work or possible data sources, etc. So we look forward to continuing the conversation with many of you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Everyone.